Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Jim Grisanzio from Oracle. We're back tonight to talk a little bit more Oracle Developer Live, Java Innovations. The conference is just in a couple of weeks now, and I'm here with one of the core speakers from Stockholm, Sweden, Erik Duveblad. Erik, welcome. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks. Happy to be here.
Hope I didn't mess up your name too bad, but anyways, nice to see you here for the first time. Nice to meet you. And I'm profiling some of the speakers, and you're talking about a project that I'm really interested in. You migrated the Java development process over to Git and GitHub. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so this started out as something I wanted to do on the side a little bit, and it was supposed to be finished in 6 months maybe, and here I am 3 years later. You know how it can turn out. But yeah, we've been migrating the OpenJDK community, which is the reference implementation of Java and the community working on that reference implementation, over to Git and GitHub from our own self-hosted Mercurial repositories to Git and GitHub.
You said it took a couple of years. Must have been a complex process.
Yeah, I think in these kinds of transitions, you're looking at multiple angles here to this problem. First of all, you have the technical issues. Like we need to get from Mercurial to Git because we saw some benefits of moving over to Git. But then you also want to bring over your processes. Like there's so much more than just the version control system for how your contributors change the code, essentially. If you want to make a change to your project, how do I go about it? So there's a lot that has to be transitioned that are more around processes, traditions, culture, etc. And we really want to try to preserve that as much as possible and bring the best part with us while also updating some of the parts that have been a little bit older and dustier.
Right. I remember when I used to be Sun on the Open Solaris project, and I remember when Solaris moved over to Mercurial, and I guess the Java team at that time moved maybe 6 months or a year later over to Mercurial as well. And I became really, really interested in observing how you take a very large source base and migrate it over to a new SCM system while you're still integrating code, and there's hundreds of developers sprinkled all over the world. You're still shipping product. And you guys did the same thing twice. And so, I was just reading a little bit of the description of your talk, and you guys wrote some insane level of same number of lines of code in order to do this integration. So tell me Yes. So talk about some of the specifics of how you actually did this.
Yeah. So I think for a transition to this large, we're looking at roughly 350 regular contributors, thousands of people just reading and following the project, and millions of users. The way we went about it is to try to go as much in parallel as possible. So provide read-only mirrors, try to set up the Git world essentially, while still keeping the Mercurial world going, so that people can have a look, try it out, play in sandboxes, make a few changes, get feedback to us. And then OpenJDK is a vast project. Most people, of course, only see the main JDK project because most people are interested in Java Development Kit. But there are tens of projects going on with various kinds of research. There's tooling, there's infrastructure. There are more researchy projects going on. So we had a plan where we transition maybe a project or two every month, starting from the smaller ones where it's just a few contributors, and then ramping up, of course, to the final conclusion, which was the JDK project with all its 300 to 500 developers transitioning. So I think that's the way to go about it, iteratively, small pieces, do everything side by side. And then we weren't afraid of writing a lot of custom tooling to help drive the process.
Right. Interesting. So are these two SCM systems similar? So both of them have been out for a long time now. So I would imagine that most developers are at least familiar with both of them. But you had to implement a new system. So was there a big learning curve for the Java community actually to move over? Because you mentioned a lot about processes as well.
Yeah, I think they both came around exactly around the same time almost. Linus Torvalds, the author of Git, and then Matt, I can't remember his last name, the author of Mercurial. They started at about the same time, and they have very similar designs. Okay. So technically, the actual moving the bits and pieces from Mercurial to Git, that is a fairly straightforward process, much thanks to the Git community's tooling that is already in place. But then there's a lot of training to cover the smaller nuances and the details where they differ. That was a lot of training, actually. I do personally think that Git is very powerful in its core concepts as a very powerful data model, but it doesn't really shine in its UI. And for a developer using Git, that UI is often the terminal and the command line. There, I think Mercurial still has the upper hand a little bit, but Git is getting better. But so there were some training involved in getting the commands may sound the same, but they behave a little bit differently. But I've been astounded by the community's uptake. Right. I think we transitioned during a weekend, of course, because we had the fewest contributors on a weekend. And then by Monday, everyone was just up and running, sort of. They had prepared so well. We took a dip of about 20% less activity the first week for the first 5 business days. And then a week later, we were up to the same speed.
Wow.
And then we just went from there. So now we're seeing much higher numbers in terms of activity from week to week. And we're talking about the number of commits here, number of interactions than before. So yeah, in about a week, we were as productive in the new system as we were in the old system.
Wow. So you spent a couple of years of work and planning and just to essentially get ready for that 1 week, really.
Yeah, it all came down to a very intense weekend where we did the final, made the Mercurial repositories read-only, switched the Git repositories over to read-write, and then also deployed all the tooling. But I mean, at that day when we actually did the switch, we had transferred around perhaps 35 OpenJDK projects already. So I think it's fair to say that we had a pretty good guess at what was expecting from us, what we had to do for the final part. But then, yeah, we were really, really impressed by how all the contributors just stepped up and got things going in a week or two. And
wow.
Since then, they've just been progressing so nicely.
Interesting. So why did you move in the first place?
So I think we had reached a point where both we were running into a few limitations with Mercurial with regards to some of its data structure that could maybe have been adjusted on our end, but we also had to look at the larger trends in the open source community. We were seeing, like, if you were following the Stack Overflow questions and answers, and if you're looking at their developer questionnaires they're sending out every year, then it's clear that Git went from perhaps 25% using Git, 50%, 75%. Right. And then the last year they stopped asking the question, what version control system do you use?
Because it's just
assumed, in the last year it was 97% Git.
Wow. Okay.
So at that point you had to say, I mean, do we really want to stay on Mercurial? If so, for how long? If the rest of the world is moving, then perhaps it's better, since we need to update our tooling anyways, that we also transition. So I think it was a fairly natural choice by then. And we are seeing this trend all over the open source community. You see LLVM moving, you see GCC moving, all these huge projects and huge repositories. They are all transitioning now and establishing themselves up on Git. So fairly natural.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, so looking forward to your talk. It's in a couple of weeks, and I'll be there. You're going to have a partner in this session as well, right?
Yeah, Robin has been doing just as much as I have done and has been a great partner in this work. So a lot of the work is also involved, and we're going to give a few details not in the talk on how we are using the GitHub platform as well to really bring over our traditions and customs from the OpenJDK community and tailor it to our experience. So I hope people are looking forward to that. If you're asking the question why Git today, the answer is almost, you can turn it around, why not? You're looking at the open source community, you're seeing an almost 95-97% uptake in open source projects. Everyone is using it. So it doesn't really, if you want to contribute to a project, you don't really want to stand out as the project where you have to learn a new version control system just to contribute. We want to make that as easy for people as possible to contribute and be part of the project. So a move to Git was very natural for us.
Right.
And the same reasoning kind of applies to GitHub as well. You're seeing a large number of projects on GitHub. There are, and we're going to discuss in the talk, some downsides to GitHub. But for the most part, I think it serves the community very well to ease new contributors into the project and help them out.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm interested. The title of the talk is Project Scala Migrating over to Git and GitHub. Why Git and GitHub?
Yeah, so Git is really the core data parts of how to store change sets, how to really describe a data model for how changes correlate with each other, which belongs together, etc. But that only serves part of an open source project needs. Yes, we know how to store the changes, but for an open source project and a community, you also need to be able to make changes, contribute changes, review changes, and interact with the other participants in the community.
Nice.
And this is where GitHub comes in and fills in parts that aren't really part of the Git core suite. Yes, there are some tooling baked into the Git upstream source project where you can use email to exchange patches, etc. But that is still not including things you might take for granted, like a way to view the changes in a web browser to easily make comments, for example, on a change. And that's the role that GitHub fills and brings a lot of tools, not only around discussing changes, but also to run testing, for example, to browse the history. So it fills in a way, a higher level concepts that a community still needs to collaborate effectively.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that brings in the collaboration part. That's really interesting. And obviously, the trends recently, I mean, it's really everyone is moving to GitHub now, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of projects are trying to standardize on GitHub. There isn't really, I mean, some open source developers do feel strongly about a project going to GitHub, perhaps because they feel that the project is locked in somehow, or that there isn't any choice anymore. But there are a lot of APIs that we utilize in Project Skara actually to ensure that all the data is freely available for the project. And B, if you're a contributor, there really isn't any motivation for you to go and learn X number of contribution processes for X number of projects. There is no benefit in having to learn a number of different tools and systems and processes if you want to contribute to multiple projects. That just gets in the way of you contributing. That's the important part. Not you having to learn a bunch of different rules and systems for how to get a change into a project.
All right. Interesting. Okay, cool. All right, Erik. Well, it was great meeting you here today, at least virtually. Hopefully next year we can meet live in Stockholm. Thanks a lot, and good luck on your session. I'll be there, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jim. Take care. Stay safe.